I stared at the empty wine bottle in my hands, my fingers tracing over the faded label from our first vintage, Hartley Estates, 1985. 37 years of blood, sweat, and California sun poured into building a $7 million vineyard from nothing but dust and dreams. And now I was standing in the gravel driveway of what used to be my home. This worthless bottle, the only thing my daughter Claire allowed me to keep. "Dad, the board voted unanimously. Your methods are outdated, and frankly, your drinking isn't helping. We need to protect the business." Those were her exact words as security escorted me off the property I signed over to her just 3 months ago. What Claire doesn't know is that I've been keeping a secret, one that will turn her carefully orchestrated little coup upside down. I'm Thomas Hartley, and this is how I lost everything I built, and how I'm about to get it all back. I never planned on being a vintner. My father was a mechanic in Sacramento. My mother taught 2nd grade. Humble beginnings, honest work. But I fell in love twice in my 20s. First with wine, then with Eleanor. She came from money, old Napa Valley wealth. Her family owned a small vineyard that was struggling, and when we married in '83, her father practically dumped it in our laps. "See if you can salvage anything," he said, not bothering to hide his disappointment in his daughter's choice of husband. Those early years were brutal. Eleanor and I lived in the dilapidated farmhouse on the property, working 18-hour days. I'd fix the equipment during the day and study viticulture books by flashlight at night. Eleanor handled the business side, charming potential investors with her family name, while I quietly learned how to coax magic from the soil. Our daughter Claire was born in 1989, right after our first successful harvest. I remember holding her in the vineyard at dawn, whispering promises about her inheritance, while the workers began picking the grapes that would save us from bankruptcy. Eleanor wanted more children, but fertility issues and the demands of a growing business made Claire our only child. I can still see Claire at 5 years old, sitting on my shoulders during harvest, her little hands sticky with grape juice. By 12, she was helping with simple tasks in the winery, soaking up knowledge like the oak barrels soaked up flavor. I was so proud watching her natural aptitude develop. She had my work ethic and her mother's business sense. When Claire announced she wanted to study viticulture and enology at UC Davis, I thought my heart would burst. Eleanor and I had turned 10 struggling acres into over 100 thriving ones, but Claire would be the one to elevate Hartley Estates into something truly special. Everything changed when Eleanor was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2010. Claire was in her junior year at Davis. I pulled her out of school against her wishes, insisting she come home to help run things while I cared for her mother. I remember the wounded look in her eyes. "You don't trust me to finish what I started," she said. I didn't have the words to explain. I was terrified of losing everything: my wife, the vineyard, my relationship with my daughter. That year remains a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy appointments, and frantically trying to keep the business afloat. I started drinking more heavily. Just a glass at first, then a bottle, sometimes 2. It was the only way I could sleep. Claire saw it all. Stepping up to handle meetings I was too hungover to attend, covering for my increasingly erratic behavior. Eleanor went into remission in 2012, but our relationship had fractured. She moved into the guest house, claiming she needed space to recover. The truth was, she couldn't stand watching what I was becoming. Claire graduated and came back to work at the vineyard full-time, but there was a new coldness between us. She'd learned to see me not as the father who had built something from nothing, but as a liability. When Eleanor died in 2019, something in Claire hardened completely. At the funeral, she stood tall in a black dress, accepting condolences with perfect poise, while I sat slumped in the front row, nursing a flask. That night, in a moment of drunken sentimentality, I made what I now realize was my greatest mistake. I promised Claire that one day, Hartley Estates would be entirely hers. "I'm going to make it official," I slurred. "I'll put it in writing. Everything I've built is for you." What I never told her, what I never told anyone, was about the deal I'd made 15 years earlier. A deal with Eleanor's younger brother James, who'd been written out of their father's will. A secret partnership that had saved us during the 2008 recession when banks were calling in loans and we were weeks away from foreclosure. James provided the cash injection we desperately needed in exchange for a silent stake in the business and a promise I'm now on the verge of breaking. Last spring, Claire organized a gala to celebrate Hartley Estates' 40th anniversary. It was meant to be the Vineyard's crowning achievement, a lavish affair with high-profile wine critics, celebrity chefs, and potential investors from as far away as China and France. Over 200 guests would be sampling our reserve vintages, including the limited production Cabernet that had just scored 96 points from Wine Spectator. 2 days before the event, Claire called a family meeting in the main house. When I arrived, I found not just my daughter, but also our accountant, Martin, and our attorney, Sophia. The conference room table was covered with financial reports, and Claire had that tight smile she reserves for difficult clients. "Dad, we need to talk about the future of Hartley Estates," she began, sliding a folder toward me. "I've drafted paperwork to transfer ownership of the vineyard to me, with a provision for you to retain a 10% silent stake and lifetime residency in the cottage." I laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. "I'm not even 70 yet, Claire. I'm not ready for retirement." "It's not about retirement," she said, her voice carefully measured. "It's about stability. The Jacobson Group is interested in a partnership that could double our distribution, but they're concerned about—" She glanced at Martin, who cleared his throat. "Your public image, Tom," Martin finished. "The incident at the Santa Rosa Wine Festival didn't help." I felt my face flush. 3 months earlier, I'd gotten into a heated argument with a critic who'd given our new Pinot a mediocre review. Words were exchanged, glasses were broken. Claire had smoothed it over, but the industry gossip had been brutal. "One mistake doesn't erase 40 years of building this business," I said, my voice rising. "I founded Hartley Estates when you were still in diapers, Claire." "You and Mom founded it," she corrected sharply, "and Mom would agree with me that it's time for a change." The mention of Eleanor hit me like a physical blow. Claire knew exactly how to weaponize her memory. "The anniversary gala is our chance to reposition the brand," Claire continued. "The Jacobson deal could secure our future for generations. All you need to do is sign." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need time to think." "We don't have time," Claire insisted. "Their representatives will be at the gala. They need assurance about leadership stability before moving forward." That night, I pulled out the bottle of our first commercial vintage, the 1985 Cabernet we'd saved for special occasions. Eleanor and I had opened similar bottles to celebrate Claire's birth, her college acceptance, her graduation. As I drank, I scrolled through my phone, looking at pictures of the three of us throughout the years. When had Claire's smile towards me changed from adoration to tolerance? I called James that night, breaking 5 years of silence between us. "Claire wants me to sign over the vineyard," I told him. "You can't do that," he said immediately. "Our agreement—" "I know what we agreed," I snapped, "but she's making a compelling case." "Tom, if you transfer ownership to Claire without addressing our arrangement, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. The documents we signed give me 30% if the business changes hands." "She doesn't know about you," I admitted. "Eleanor wanted it that way." "That was Eleanor protecting her family reputation," James said bitterly. "But business is business. I've kept my end of the bargain for 15 years, staying invisible while my investment helped build Hartley Estates into what it is today." The day of the gala arrived with perfect wine country weather, 75 degrees, clear blue skies, just enough breeze to keep guests comfortable under the white reception tents. Claire had transformed the property, with string lights hanging from the ancient oak trees and flower arrangements featuring grape leaves and local wildflowers on every table. A small orchestra played near the rose garden where Eleanor used to spend her mornings. Claire intercepted me as I headed for the bar. "Did you bring the papers?" she asked, keeping her voice low and her smile fixed for passing guests. "I'm still considering," I said. Her smile tightened. "The Jacobsons are here. I've told them it's a done deal." "You shouldn't have done that." "I did what was necessary for the business," she hissed.
"Just like I've been doing for years while you've been drowning yourself in product." Before I could respond, she spotted someone over my shoulder and her expression transformed. "Mr. Jacobson, I'm so glad you could make it. Have you met my father, the founder of Hartley Estates?" A tall man with silver hair extended his hand. "Thomas, finally, your daughter speaks highly of your vision." "Does she?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. As Claire led Jacobson away, I caught sight of a familiar figure across the lawn. James, Eleanor's brother, who had not been invited. He raised his wine glass in my direction, a silent toast that felt more like a threat. The collision course was set. Claire wanted me to sign away my life's work. James was prepared to reveal our secret arrangement if I did. And I, caught between them, made my way to the bar and ordered a double scotch neat. Claire spotted me at the bar and made a beeline across the manicured lawn, her heels sinking slightly into the grass with each determined step. "Dad," she said through clenched teeth, "we agreed you'd stick to wine tonight." I raised my glass. "I built this place. I'll drink what I want." Her face flushed, but she maintained her composure. "The Jacobsons want to meet with us privately. This is happening, with or without your blessing." I caught James watching us from near the barrel room entrance. "There's something you should know before you make promises you can't keep," I said. "Save it," Claire cut me off. "Just be in the library in 15 minutes, and for God's sake, switch to water." The scotch burned going down, but not as much as the resentment that had been building for years. I'd sacrificed everything for this place, my youth, my marriage, nearly my relationship with my daughter. And now she wanted to push me aside like outdated equipment. I glanced around at the guests in their expensive attire, laughing and commenting on the notes of blackberry and hints of oak in our wines. None of them knew what it took to create what they were so casually enjoying. The back-breaking labor of harvest, the sleepless nights during unexpected frosts, the gamble every season represents. James approached as Claire walked away. "She doesn't know I'm here," he said quietly, "but that Jacobson deal can't happen without my approval. You know that, right?" "I'm handling it," I muttered. "Doesn't look like it from where I'm standing," James replied. "You signed papers, Tom, legally binding papers." I drained my glass. "You got your investment back tenfold. And I'm entitled to more if ownership changes hands. That was our agreement." 15 minutes later, I entered the library, a room Eleanor had designed, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather chairs. Claire sat with the Jacobsons, father and son, and our attorney, Sophia, papers spread on the antique desk. "There he is," Claire's voice was too bright. "We were just reviewing the final details." Mr. Jacobson stood to shake my hand. "Claire tells me you've made a wise decision. Generational transition is always challenging, but she assures me you're ready to step into an advisory role."
I looked at my daughter, at the triumphant gleam in her eyes. "Actually," I said slowly, "there's a complication Claire isn't aware of." Sophia looked up sharply. Claire's smile faltered. "Hartley Estates isn't entirely ours to transfer," I continued. 15 years ago, during the recession, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. The banks were calling in loans, and we had 3 bad harvests in a row." "Dad, this isn't the time for a history lesson," Claire interrupted. "It is exactly the time," I countered, "because Eleanor and I made a deal to save this place. Her brother James provided an emergency cash infusion in exchange for a 30% stake in the business." The room went silent. Claire's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she finally whispered. "Mom would have told me." "Your mother was protecting the family name," I said. "James had some legal troubles back then. Having him publicly associated with Hartley Estates would have damaged our reputation." As if on cue, the library door opened and James walked in. "Sorry to crash the party," he said, not sounding sorry at all. Claire stood so quickly her chair tipped backward. "You're lying, both of you." Sophia cleared her throat. "I should mention that if there is indeed an undisclosed ownership stake, any transfer agreement would be null without all parties' consent." The Jacobsons exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Show her the paperwork, James," I said. James reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "Signed by both your parents, Claire. Notarized and legally binding." Claire snatched the paper, her hands shaking as she read. "This can't be real. Mom would never." "She did what was necessary," I said, echoing Claire's earlier words, "just like I've been doing for 40 years. By drinking yourself into oblivion, by embarrassing us at industry events," Claire's voice rose, "you've become a liability to your own legacy." "A legacy I built," I shouted back, slamming my hand on the desk. "This vineyard exists because I refused to give up when everyone, including your grandfather, said we would fail." The younger Jacobson stood. "I think we should reschedule." "No," Claire said desperately. "Please, this is just a misunderstanding." I felt a strange calm settle over me as I watched my daughter's carefully constructed plans crumble. "There's no misunderstanding, Claire. You tried to force me out of my own business without knowing all the facts, just like you've been trying to erase me from Hartley Estates for years." I turned to leave, but Claire grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare walk away. Not now." I gently removed her hand. "I already signed papers this morning, but not the ones you wanted. I've filed for dissolution of the current business structure. We're going to start over, with everything on the table." As I walked out, I grabbed that 1985 bottle, now empty, from a display case. The last tangible reminder of when we were a family working toward a shared dream, not competitors fighting for control. The fallout was immediate and messy. The Jacobsons left within minutes, their interest in partnership evaporating amid our family drama. Claire tried to salvage something from the evening, but word spread quickly among the guests that something had gone terribly wrong. By midnight, the gala that was meant to celebrate 40 years of Hartley Estates had become a whispered scandal among Napa Valley's elite. I spent that night in a motel off Highway 29, the empty 1985 bottle on the nightstand beside me. For the first time in years, I didn't drink myself to sleep. Instead, I lay awake replaying every decision that had led us here. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Claire had locked me out of the company accounts and changed the security codes at the main house. Our winemaker, Miguel, called to tell me he'd been instructed not to discuss business matters with me. Most painfully, Claire had sent an email to our entire staff explaining that I was taking a sabbatical to address personal health issues. James called around noon. "That didn't go quite as planned," he said. "No," I agreed, "it didn't." "I never wanted to cause this kind of rift," he said, surprising me with what sounded like genuine regret. "Eleanor would be heartbroken." "Eleanor kept too many secrets," I replied. "Maybe if we'd been honest from the beginning." 3 days later, Claire finally agreed to meet me at a neutral location, a coffee shop in St. Helena where Eleanor and I used to go on Sunday mornings. She arrived looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed. "The dissolution paperwork is being processed," she said without preamble. "Sophia says we have 30 days to negotiate a new arrangement, or the courts will decide." "I don't want courts involved," I said. "This is family business." Claire laughed bitterly. "Family? You and Uncle James conspired behind my back for 15 years? How is that family?" "We were protecting you," I tried to explain. "You were just starting college when the recession hit. We nearly lost everything. So instead of telling me the truth, you let me believe a lie about our business. And now you're surprised I don't trust you?" She shook her head. "You've been checked out for years, Dad. Missing meetings, showing up drunk to tastings, alienating distributors. Someone had to take control." Her words stung because they contained truth. I had been drowning my grief over Eleanor in alcohol, retreating from responsibilities. But that wasn't the whole story. "Did you ever wonder why I started drinking more?" I asked quietly. "Mom's death?" "Before that," I interrupted. "It started when you came back from Davis, when you started second-guessing every decision I made, bringing in consultants without discussing it with me, modernizing processes that had worked for decades." Claire looked genuinely surprised. "I was trying to help, to bring new techniques." "Without respecting what built this place," I finished. "You treated me like a relic, Claire, not like a partner." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of years of miscommunication between us. "I found Mom's journals," Claire finally said.
After you dropped your bombshell at the gala, I went looking for anything that might corroborate your story." My heart sank. Eleanor had kept meticulous journals throughout her life. "She wrote about the deal with Uncle James," Claire continued. "But she also wrote about how much she admired your dedication, how you worked yourself to exhaustion to save the vineyard." She met my eyes. "And she wrote about how worried she was that you'd never learn to let go, that you'd work yourself into an early grave like her father did." I hadn't expected this turn. Eleanor worried too much. "Did she?" Claire challenged. "Look at yourself, Dad. When was the last time you enjoyed the vineyard instead of just working it? When was the last time you sat among the vines at sunset without a spreadsheet or a problem to solve?" Her question hit me with unexpected force. I couldn't remember. The vineyard had become an obligation, not a joy. 2 weeks later, we met again, this time with James, Sophia, and a mediator. The discussion lasted 8 hours, with raised voices and moments of painful honesty. By evening, we had the framework of a solution. A restructured business with Claire as CEO, James's stake officially recognized, and me in a newly created role as founding vintner, focusing exclusively on wine production and quality, not business operations. It was Miguel who helped me see the opportunity in this arrangement. "You never liked the business side anyway," he said when I told him about the new structure. "Remember when you used to sleep in the barrel room during fermentation? When you could tell by smell alone if a batch was developing correctly? That's the Thomas Hartley who taught me everything I know about winemaking." He was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost touch with what I loved most about our vineyard. The transition wasn't smooth. Claire and I still butted heads regularly. James proved to be more knowledgeable about wine than I'd given him credit for, offering valuable input on expansion opportunities. But slowly, a new dynamic emerged, one based on reluctant respect rather than resentment. 6 months after the gala disaster, I moved out of the cottage into a small house in Yountville. The distance gave us all room to breathe.
Claire launched the partnership with a different investment group, one that respected our family's complex dynamics. I refocused on winemaking, mentoring our younger staff, and developing a new line of limited production wines that honored Eleanor's memory. The most unexpected development came from an old leather portfolio I found while packing my office. Inside were Eleanor's original sketches for a wine she'd wanted to create, a unique white blend she'd conceptualized but never produced. Along with the sketches were notes in her handwriting. For Claire's wedding day, whenever that comes. I brought the portfolio to Claire one evening after a particularly productive harvest. We sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset paint the vineyards gold. "I think we should make this," I said, showing her Eleanor's notes. "Together." Claire studied the pages, her fingers tracing her mother's handwriting. She never mentioned this to me. "She was saving it," I explained, "a surprise for your future." Something shifted between us in that moment, a small crack in the wall of resentment that had built up over years. "I'd like that," Claire said softly, "but only if you promise to stay sober through the whole production process." It was a fair condition, and one I was finally ready to meet. The empty 1985 bottle now sits on my mantel, not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I nearly threw away. Today marks 1 year since that fateful gala. The Eleanor's Promise white blend we created is aging in French oak barrels, waiting for the right moment. Claire and I still disagree on many things, but we've learned to listen to each other. The vineyard is thriving under our shared vision. Claire's business acumen, James's connections, and my experience with the land. I still keep that empty 1985 bottle. Not because I'm holding on to bitterness, but because it reminds me that legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you build together. Sometimes the things we think we've lost are just waiting to be rediscovered in a different form. If there's one thing I've learned from 40 years among the vines, it's that the sweetest vintages often come after the hardest seasons. Family businesses, like fine wines, require patience, care, and sometimes the courage to start over. If you've ever faced a crossroads with your family or business, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below.
And if you found something valuable in mine, please hit that subscribe button for more real-life journeys of loss, reconciliation, and second chances. Because even when life hands you an empty bottle, remember, there's always another harvest on the horizon.